I saw an interview recently that Will Herron interviewed that chick Kay that goes to all of Nick's court appearances and everything. I don't know if you saw it or not, but so like she's been going to Nick's appearances and she's been talking about how she, as the child of an addict mother, is noticing a lot of unfortunate things in Nick's behavior that she went through as a kid. So she's been going online and saying all this shit and pointing all this shit out. And this was like, so it's again, another one of those moments where like, there's the guy I know. There's the guy I know showing up in public. There he's dropping the facade that he has on Twitter. There he's dropping the facade that he has on stream. That's the guy I know. So apparently this chick was at the courthouse for his settlement conference. And he picked her out and he walked toward her, just made a beeline for her. The minute he saw her, sat down and started like trying to brainwash her. Like he sat down and he's like, I think you and I got off on the wrong foot. Now remember, this is a guy who went on Melton's show and then told Melton that he had just DM'd him a bunch of photos of this woman and called her a hobgoblin. So it's not like, oh, I think we got off on the wrong foot. No, she called you out for what you are and you acted like a petulant, drunk child. That's what happened. You guys didn't get off on the wrong foot. You see, nothing is ever his fault. You know, it's always a mutual thing. Well, we got off on the wrong foot. No, you were a cunt. And he starts talking to this woman and spilling his guts about how he's not an addict. You know, he went through that whole thing. I don't have an addiction. I don't have a problem. He goes, it was all just a fun thing to do. Now, to me, that's worse. Like, I was watching that Will Herron interview and I went, oh my God, that's way fucking worse. I mean, if you could say I'm an addict, then at least if you say you're an addict, you'd be like, oh my God, you couldn't stop yourself. You know, you were doing all these things around your family, around your children. Again, 5 children, you're doing all of these things. He said it was just a fun thing to do. I wasn't an addict. It was just a fun thing to do. So if you're an addict, people will be like, oh my God, you get on the straight and narrow. I'm really sorry. You couldn't stop yourself. That's so terrible. That's a hell to live in. And then when you go, it was just a fun thing to do, that means that you didn't give a fuck about anybody. Like children, forget it. You didn't give a fuck about anybody and you were just doing it. You could have stopped. Like anytime an addict says, oh, I could have stopped at any time. You're like, well, then why didn't you? Like, oh, I could have stopped whenever. Oh, so it's not that you were an addict. It's not that you couldn't help it and you abused all these children. And yes, doing drugs in a house full of children is abusing them. You could have stopped at any time and you chose not to? You chose not to. He sat down at a bench in a courthouse and like spilled his gut, didn't spill his guts to this chick, was like totally manipulating this chick. And then he tells her, and then she goes on Will Herron's show and she goes, oh yeah, he was totally trying to handle me. He was totally trying to manipulate me. She goes, I saw the same behaviors out of my mother when I was growing up with her. And then he said something about how like he's been leaning on his oldest and his oldest has like helped keep them on the straight and narrow and blah, blah, blah. And then the woman who's being interviewed with Will Herron goes, I don't think he understands how horrifying of a thing that is. She goes, as a child, my mother did that to me because she was a junkie and it has lifelong ramifications on you as a kid. It's called parentalizing a child or something like that. There's a phrase for it. And I was just like, Jesus Christ. But there was that moment where he goes, oh yeah, where she said, oh yeah, he said to me, I'm not an addict. I just did it because it was fun. It's like, so you could have stopped at any time, which he couldn't have, by the way. He couldn't have. He didn't stop until the police literally knocked down his door. You could have stopped at any time in your own head and you chose not to. You realize that makes you a shittier guy. All right. Sam Show says, the best thing about Nick is he's so lonely. He's just telling random people his deepest inner thoughts. That is weird. Yeah, like the guy who came to me and told me all the stuff that Nick's been telling him. I'm just like, bro, why are you fucking just blabbing this shit to random strangers? What the fuck is that? Like, stop it.